But as far as the dynamic is, the director understanding that you're there to do a job too. You know, they're there to make the art, you're there to make sure that the art stays on time.
Welcome back to the Indie Spotlight Podcast, Season 2, Episode 10. If you're new to this series, I love to pull back the curtain and explain some of the ins and outs of the independent filmmaking world by talking to some of the brightest and most talented individuals in the industry. If you recall last week, I had the wonderful actress and stuntwoman Megan Renault on the show. Now we're shifting gears a little bit away from some of the work that's done in front of the camera and talking to one of the absolute geniuses behind the camera on crew, Tyler Pigott.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Way to really boost that ego right there in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. No, you were a lifesaver on In the Hands of Fate, and just I like to describe you as a little bit of almost like a jack of all trades, because I mean, at your core, and it's like the top credit that you have, even on In the Hands of Fate, which you have multiple credits on. But the top one is your first assistant director. But then you also do grip work, you do camera work. I mean, you had to do sound mixing one day.
Yep.
And so, how did you get started, just in general, working in film?
So, real similar. I saw the episode from a couple weeks ago with Keith. We actually started in the industry together on The Hunting. That was our first for both. So Mark Hamer is a really, really good director, and he's like, I wanted to work crew, and he's like, I know the perfect job for you. I'm going to teach you essentially how to be a first assistant director. And so that's how I got started with Keith and Hillis on that movie, and that's where I kind of fell in love with the crew work.
That's awesome. So, for someone who isn't as familiar with the job, what responsibilities do you take on when you step onto a set as first assistant director?
So a lot of time it's scheduling, both on the actual like set that day and the scheduling all together. But in the indie world, a lot of times the director producers have kind of already worked that scheduling out before, you know, I kind of show up. And because a lot of times I show up with Keith, maybe he got an acting part or something like that, and I just kind of start helping out, which is kind of how it worked out on In the Hands of Fate. And you're like, you know what? I want you to be here as often as possible. So that's how that worked with In the Hands of Fate. And so it's just scheduling all together, trying to keep the director on track, because they're really built into the creative side of things, so they can kind of linger on a certain scene or a shot. And you have to kind of remind them like, hey, we've been working on this one little scene for 20 minutes and you wanted to be outside already. So it's a lot of scheduling, keeping things on track, and just trying to keep the day moving.
Yeah, and I'll say this, the days when you're on set are infinitely smoother in terms of my stress level than when you're not on set, because I'll tell you right now, having, and this is good for anyone that's watching this, having someone on set that can help keep track of the time and keep track of the schedule is absolutely amazing to have when you're directing a movie. Because I mean, and let's face it, you know, in the independent world, crews are very skeletal.
Yes.
There's not that many people, and everyone's doing multiple different jobs.
Right.
And I can say that when I don't have a first AD on set with me, I'm essentially trying to do that job myself. Like the first day that you met me, before I knew that that's what you did, I was trying to be my own first AD,
Yep.
running around with the clipboard, going through my schedule like this, back and forth on the clipboard, drop the clipboard, pick up the camera. I was like DP, directing, first AD, trying to do it all at the same time. I'm working with the actors, run back behind the camera, run to Wendy's, grab a bunch of burgers.
Right.
It was, you know, I'm doing, at that point, I'm doing PA work. You send
Right.
a PA out to Wendy's
That's
to
right.
get the $100 worth of burgers. But it's one of those things where, but when you have someone on that, because it's such a different mindset, you know. I think that's why I asked you about like what does being a first AD entail, because somebody who's new to this and might not be as familiar with the different positions on a crew might, you know, think, oh, they're helping the director direct, and it's like it's not exactly that. It's
right,
because the directing side of it is that very creative aspect that you're focused on the art. But then you have to like to be an assistant director, you have to completely shift that. Now you're more logical, business focused, and like, hey, we have a clock. You said that we're trying to have lunch by, and that's one of the big things is lunch. Make
Yes.
sure we're eating on time.
Oh, yeah.
You say we're going to have lunch at 1:00 after we wrap scene 5. Well, we just started scene 5 and it's 12 o'clock. So you might want to rethink this a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's good to have. So my next question, I guess, to kind of go off of that is, what do you think makes for a good dynamic, though, and relationship between a first assistant director and the director of the film?
So, I mean, a big one is just being able to get along, because, you know, there are just some people that you run into that just, you know, maybe they rub you the wrong way or something like that, and it just doesn't work out right when it comes to the actual relationship. But as far as the dynamic is, the director understanding that you're there to do a job too. You know, they're there to make the art, you're there to make sure that the art stays on time. And that's a big one is, you know, if you get somebody, a director who might be a little too hard-headed when it comes to, you know, no, I'm, you know, 100% in charge. It's like you hired me to do a job. And so it's like, you know, I understand you might be frustrated in a scene, and I understand some of that can transfer, but it's just a cohesive, you know, like a cohesive bond with working together, that you're both there for the same outcome. And as long as you both keep that in mind, you know, even if there might be a little bit of tension, might be, you know, people are always freaking out, you know, schedule-wise, creative-wise, you know, like you said, sometimes you're running around doing 10 different things, you know, but as long as we both understand we're working towards the same goal, it usually works out fine.
I think that's great advice. It's the key thing. And we've talked about this before, about like checking your ego at the door too. And it's really about, look, you're bringing people on to your crew, whether it's the assistant director, whether it's your director of photography, your sound mixer, your makeup artist, whoever, you know, that comprises this. It takes a village to make a movie, but you're all coming together to make a good product. Mm-hmm. And when it all comes to it, you need to give everybody that space to do their job, because I would rather have a good end product, a good quality movie, and have a set that was fun, that was productive, that people had a positive experience on, that people want to come back to, mm-hmm. than worry about, no, I have to have this shot absolutely perfect, and we will. I don't care if it takes 70 takes, but I want to have this rack focus immaculate. It's like,
right, and it has to be done before lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to balance. Like you want to have that creativity, but I think that's why I like working with you, is because, you know, I like having somebody on set that can focus on the more logistical side of it, because, you know, I'm a very logistical thinker, but it frees me up. Actually, if anything, it frees me up to think more creatively when I'm not worried about the logistics. Right. Because the fact of the matter is I know that when it all comes to it, you know, everybody wants to be able to go home eventually. Nobody really wants to have, you know, a 16-hour day on set that could have been maybe right. only 10 hours. You know, like, why are we standing around? We need to be doing something. And so that's why I think it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there, you know, in the hands of fate, there were a couple of times, you know, people get talking, people are having fun, and sometimes there has to be that person where it's like, okay, we've had our break, you know, nobody wants to be here till 4 a.m., so let's get back to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I think, and we have that a lot on, because, I mean, it's my favorite. It's actually my favorite scene in the entire movie, but it was our longest shoot. And actually, I factored it out, and including every film project I've ever been on, it is not my longest. There's one day that was actually longer, but that was for a different movie. Mm-hmm. I had one longer shoot day for a different movie. But second most longest day I've ever had, and the longest day on In the Hands of Fate was when we were at the Wayside Inn in Perrysville. Okay. And you remember that. That was, we had to reschedule it, and we were shooting on 4th of July weekend. Yep. And I wanted us to shoot, I had us get there. I was there since noon, but I think I had cast arrive at like 2 o'clock mm-hmm. in the afternoon. And we were to shoot everything indoors during the daytime where we could block out lights, then have dinner. Then when it got dark, shoot everything that's nighttime. But yep. we had issue after issue after issue that day, especially after dark. Because yep. once again, it was 4th of July weekend. and we happen to be by a park. Now, what might that entail, I wonder?
Oh, fireworks, maybe?
Yeah, maybe fireworks, and also a street that's usually dead being as packed as Manhattan at 5 p.m.
Absolutely.
So-
Every time we would go to shoot, hold for car. Hold for car.
Yeah, by the end of that, we joke about the way my hair gets.
Yes.
That was one of those. It was one of those days. But having you there, we might have wrapped at 2 a.m. Without you, we might have been lucky to wrap by sun up.
You know, if you keep talking about me this way, I might just have to come on more often. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love patting people's egos. You know?
You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
So, I want to kind of keep on this topic a little bit, though. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see young directors make when you're working on sets?
Biggest ones probably for like young directors is I kind of already touched on a little bit, is the, you know, it's my way or the highway type of deal, because there might be something, you know, I've heard you talk about it in past episodes. There might be something I suggest that might, you know, either save time, get you the same shot, but doesn't take, you know, 45 minutes to set that shot up. And so there might be, I guess, taking advice or not taking advice would be probably the biggest mistake that I do see a lot of younger directors take.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, and it's something I talk about a lot. And then I think, honestly, I think most of the people that are listening to us on Spotify right now or watching us on YouTube probably have the same opinion and same mindset of it's always important to keep learning. It's always important to keep growing. I mean, that's probably why you're watching us here today, because you are trying to continue to grow and continue to learn. So shifting gears a little bit, we talked about how you're kind of a jack of all trades. So obviously, because you kind of got your hands into a lot of different departments on a film set, how did you go about learning and acquiring different skills to be able to, like, say, for instance, the day that you jumped in and ran sound, or times where I saw on IMDb you have a camera operator credit, you have, you know, lots of grip credits. How did you develop, like, the different skills to be able to jump into these different roles and be comfortable in them?
Well, you talk about always being willing to learn and willing to always take in information. If something is needed on a set, I'm like, if somebody can show me how to do it, I'll do it. You know, I'm always willing to pick. A big thing is a lot of people are always scared to handle equipment. It's like, well, if you're ever going to learn it, you have to handle the equipment. So it's, you know, if you teach me, I may have never used your camera before, but you teach me how to use it, and you need me to shoot something, I'll shoot something. If I've never handled the sound equipment before, just show me how to use it and I'll use it. And so that's just how I kind of developed all the knowledge through all the different departments, is just being willing to pick up the equipment and learn.
Yeah. Which, no, I'm not going to. I was about to tell a story, but it would have kind of been a small spoiler for In the Hands of Fate. I can work around it. Let's just say that I'm laying on. There is a time where I'm laying on the ground, and you needed to come over and hit record on that camera, because obviously I'm acting in the scene, and you know, as much as I wish I could be like Reed Richards and stretch my arm all the way across the turn, I can't do that.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where it's great having. And if you're watching this and you're just looking on ways to get involved, I think that's the key, is to go on to set and get involved in any way that you can.
Yeah, especially in the indie world too, because, you know, especially in like working with directors like yourself, because you're always willing to either help, learn, teach some way of helping somebody get better. And so like in the indie world, you'll find that, you know, if I were to make a mistake on the shot, you would look at it and go, I don't really like that, you know, can you try this next time? Because you had to be in the scene. And so you would just, you know, but it's not like, oh, you can't do it, anything like that. You would teach me what you see as your vision, and then we would reshoot the scene. And it's just people also being willing to teach is a big thing too. And I think the indie world is a great place to learn a lot of these skills.
Absolutely. Because I mean, the industry can be very, very cutthroat. I think that's why I like the independent world. And even, you know, let's say in the future I'm working with bigger budgets, doing bigger projects, directing bigger projects. I still want to run it similarly in terms of how I treat people and being willing to show people.
And that'll go a long way. If you're always willing to treat people nicely, you will always have crew come back, and then as you work with the same crew, that synergy from behind the camera grows, which just makes an even better product.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So everybody knows this. I've made the official announcement already, and I'm currently in development right now on my next feature film, which all I can say about it is a detective thriller called Crimson Night. But I will say that I am in a position now where I can take a sheet of notebook paper, write all the different crew positions I need, and just write a list of names. And I know exactly who to call.
And that makes your pre-production even easier too.
Yep. Like I know who I want on camera. I know who I want on sound. I know who I want on makeup. I know who I want to help out as, assistant directing it, So obviously it's
whoever that is, make sure you call him soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'll give him a ring. He might be listening to us here today.
He could be.
He might be in the room with us now.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe. I don't know. He could be behind the camera watching us for all we know.
Probably, making sure it's recording properly.
Yeah, not looking at his phone. So, kind of shifting gears. Well, before we shift gears, for everyone watching this, adding a little bit of humor into it, we got some people that are helping us out kind of behind the scenes that may or may not have been here a few weeks ago doing earlier episodes. But what I want to talk about now is shifting gears just a little bit in terms of talking about grip work. Because on IMDb, if assistant director is like your top credit, grip is your like next down from that in terms of what you've done the most. So describe in the simplest terms to a dummy that's like new to the film industry, what does it mean to be a grip? What do you need to do, and what makes a good grip?
So a grip, I'll say in the indie world, handles like lighting, setting up, even work in a little bit of set design as a grip in the indie world. You talked about blacking out windows. The grips, they do the blacking out of the windows, the lighting, basically getting the space ready for the camera to come in. And then once the camera's in, because it's always a different vision through the lens, then they move lights, they move stuff on set. The space, simplest terms, they get the space ready for the scene.
There you go. So what advice would you have for somebody in terms of, because to me when I think of that and I think of what somebody might need to bring to the table, what skills you might need to bring to the table to come onto a set and say, hey, I can help you out as a grip. It's kind of having an awareness of your space, an awareness of where you need to be.
And also along those lines is, you do have to kind of understand what the director is looking for in the scene. Because, depending on where you put a light can change it from being a very dramatic scene, can change it to be, very, your subject is ultra lit. You can have a subject kind of half lit. And it also comes down to knowing what the director wants and also being able to understand, how light works, because there are bounces, there are, diffusers, there's all this different kind of information that could change the entire dynamic of the scene.
Right, like how hard a light's coming at or how soft it is, because obviously if you want something more like high contrast, very dramatic, in your face, you might take a key light without any diffuser, shine this, hot, sharp light on one side of their face, the other side shadowed. You got them looking like two-faced, and that's going to be a very extreme. And let's say you're doing a romantic comedy, that might be extremely inappropriate. And it's like the director's going to look at that and go, what?
Yeah.
And when really what you need is something that's more of not necessarily a flat lighting, but something more evenly balanced. Maybe a typical three-point lighting scheme where most of the light's very soft. You don't have any hard light hitting them, and it's a matter of knowing like what's the tone.
Right, and also being able to use the space because, in the indie world, sometimes equipment can be slightly limited. So if you don't have a professional bounce, it's knowing that, oh, look, the ceiling is white, so I know it's going to bounce well, but it helps fill the room much more evenly. So it comes down to also being able to use the equipment efficiently that you have.
Absolutely. And we've talked about that too in the past of I mean, if you're working even with limited gear, limited budget, you can make what you have go a lot farther than what you realize.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
So if you could pick just one job to do on a film set, like, because obviously you've done a lot, but what would you say is your favorite thing to do?
So this might surprise a lot of people just because it's neither of my 2 top credits. I really enjoy running sound.
Really?
Yes, I love being the sound guy, and I'll do it all. I'll have the mixing bag. I'll hold the boom. I don't know. It just seems like, even though it's not one of my top 2 credits, it's probably what I like doing the most.
That's awesome. It's honestly, a lot of people. I think the 3 biggest things, and I've jokingly described like in terms of when you think of like a band, like a music band, like you think, oh yeah, you know, you got everyone is worried about the singer, the guitarist, you know, and I'd say that's your director, your actors, you know, your director of photography, and then you got the drummer and bassist, and I say that's kind of where sound is, you know, and it's like, but the reality is, and I'm glad that you said this, is people don't talk about how important good sound is.
Oh yeah,
it's more important than good video.
Absolutely.
It's infinitely more important than good video, and not that you want to have bad video. You want your shot to look great. But you can have the most beautiful, gorgeous looking shot in the world, and it sounds like nobody's watching that crap. It's garbage. I'm turning it off, okay?
Yeah. How was this movie? Oh, it looked great, but it sounded awful, so I turned it off.
Meanwhile, what I could take a contrary. I could take this old, cheap, off-brand, you know, video camcorder that says it's 4K, but really you're lucky if it shoots in 720. I haven't even figured that one out yet. But I can take that and I could say, okay, well, this has its uses. I could use this as kind of like a found footage style camera, and and people like found footage movies, but I'll have really good sound, and people will watch that. Now, I might not be shooting it in 4K RAW, and you know, I might not have real fancy color grading and a nice, beautiful light over top of it with these stark, vibrant colors and everything. It might just be like Blair Witch Project, but the audio's good, so people are still going to watch it. People are going to enjoy it. It's going to have an audience.
Tell me you work in film without telling me you work in film by naming every possible setting that you can have.
Oh yeah. It's. I'm not trying to like flex or anything. But.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We're only here to boost my ego, to talk about good sound. I just hit the microphone.
Yeah. We're talking about good sound. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you that are listening on Spotify, I apologize. Unless I did my due diligence in post and I cut that out. So.
Maybe I hit the mic. We'll see.
No, but it is the sound. So, because I've seen that. I've seen movies that they have just bad sound, and it's hard to sit through.
It is.
And a lot of it's, you know, and I think a lot of it's in the indie world. I think a lot of it's with young and green filmmakers that aren't thinking about that. They might be trying to, like, you know, flex their muscles on, I got this really cool story, and they might not really know what they're doing. And they have someone inexperienced that doesn't know, you know, how to properly run the sound equipment, and
or anyone at all. You know, you get a lot of young new directors who are so focused on, like you said, the story. And look,
or even the camera.
I would say I've got this really nice camera and it's going to look really good, and then they almost come, you know, they're basically on top of shoot day and they go, oh yeah, I need sound. And I think a lot of that from the creative side, you know, this is where the creative versus the logistical side kind of comes in, is so focused on the creative, so focused on the camera, how it's going to look really good. And then, you know, it's like, oh, I need sound and lights and all this other stuff that kind of falls by the wayside because I'm not saying they forget it, you know, but the inexperience, and they get so excited about the story and about, you know, what they've written, which is fantastic. There's just a lot of stuff that goes into bringing it to life.
Right. And I think of some of it too could be even underestimating like what you need in order to get good sound, because I think there's some people that will try to, well, you can hear it and they'll just record it off of camera audio.
Right.
And camera audio is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's never good. But they don't realize that you need some kind of a recorder. And it can be, I've recorded good sound off of a Zoom H4n. I mean, those things are old as dirt, and they're about dirt cheap. And that's great. That's great for someone that's starting out, because you can get decent sound with that. Even a budget-friendly shotgun mic. And if and we talked about a scenario earlier where someone might have been using a broomstick as a boom pole. As long as you don't have it running into an iPhone as your recorder, let's say you actually have a Zoom H4. If you want to use a broomstick as your boom pole, no one's going to care about that when the movie's done. That's not going to affect the sound quality.
Because nobody's going to see it.
Exactly.
But it does take, if you have the budget for it, look for a recorder that can get you 32-bit float audio recordings, because that just, in editing, that gives you the most range to work with.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of sound work that goes into in post-production.
Yes.
Which, that's another shout out I have to give to Michael Render, because Mike helped out a ton with the post-production sound mixing.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. But it is. There's so much that goes into it, and even when it comes down to getting Foley sound, the sound effects.
Yep.
When it comes into even the music is such a big part of it too, and then balancing that, because I've seen movies where I'm like, oh yeah, dude, you got some really good music in here. Too bad I can't hear the dialogue.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance of knowing, okay, you want to hear the music, but you need to hear the dialogue. So where do the levels need to be, and how do you mix that? How do you balance that together?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And sound post work is a whole nother monster that I am not a sound post guy. We'll leave that to Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Mike's an expert in it. I know, name dropping more people. I know Davis Woodring's another good guy. He does a lot of post work as well. Probably some people I'm off the top of my head I'm missing, but I know there's a lot of people that do some really good post production work. But what in terms of what draws you to sound? Because I did not expect that to be your answer. What draws you to it?
I feel like because I'm a part of every scene. Sound is needed in every single scene. So to know that you're a part of the entire project, you're there helping make sure that it's the best product it possibly can be. Because as an assistant director, there's a lot you deal with that goes into it, but as sound, you're there for every scene, every take, every shot, ensuring that, at least from your component, that this is the best product it can be.
Awesome. I love it. That's great. So do you have any on-set stories, any funny war stories that you want to share on the podcast?
So I have one, and I don't think he was prepared for me to tell it, but it's probably the funniest moment that I've ever had. It wasn't on set, but it was part of the hunting.
Okay.
There was some woman who out of nowhere, when we were filming the hunting, because we're staying in a hotel near the set, who just for whatever reason became absolutely infatuated with Keith, and because it was one of those hotels where they had a bar and a small restaurant. And for whatever reason, so then there's me, two of the producers, Keith, Hillis, and we're just talking. All of a sudden, she turns the corner, and it was this fast. I went almost aghast because I knew she was here to talk to Keith, and by the time I turned like this, he was gone. He had ducked under the couch, under the table couch was army crawling down these little set of stairs. And eventually jumped out the window because she was looking for him. And we're all trying to cover for him, oh yeah, I don't know, I haven't seen him. And she's like, oh, I heard him out here talking. And we're like, nope, he wasn't here. And he eventually jumped out the window till she left and then came back inside the hotel.
So you remember Ed and Eddie and the
Yep.
what was it, the Canker sisters that were always going after him?
Yep.
Why am I picturing that?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what it was like. And he's, we're talking army crawling down the hallway of a hotel, trying to get away. It was hilarious. And of course, we all have to keep our composure because we're covering for him.
Right.
And so, we're like, yeah, no, haven't seen him. And out of the corner of your eye, you see going down the hallway, So that's probably my funniest one.
That is, I wish I could have been there that day.
I may have a video I can show you as long as it's still hidden in one of our drives.
Now, if I could find that woman, I might have to reach out to her. I might have to cast her in a movie and just let it be a surprise for both parties involved.
It would absolutely be a surprise for both parties. I will 100% help, and I will not tell him.
Okay, wonderful. And don't tell her either. She can't even know that he's going to be.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not.
That'll be the best part. That'll be the best part. Yeah, and then Megan will be there to throw some hands. If yeah, and I wouldn't mess with her.
I heard she does stunts or something. I don't know.
Something like that. I don't know.
I missed that episode.
Yeah, if you're curious to check it out, though, that was last week's episode. She came over here last week to record that one. I totally didn't just change shirts and we're doing this in the same night. Nothing like that.
Absolutely not.
No.
It's just me here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the people that we keep looking off to the side, those are just the voices in my head.
Yes.
They're not really here.
Well, it's just your mom.
Just my mom and a couple of the voices in my head.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So, all right. This has been a fun episode, and we got to always end it with the most fun question of them all. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna put you on a desert island.
Okay.
Which I will let you know this answering some questions in advance.
Okay.
You were on a ship. The ship is shipwrecked.
Okay.
The time of day that you land on the island is approximately 12:14 p.m.
Got it.
We'd be on daylight savings time when you crash land.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, that's very important. It's
Sure.
very important.
Seems like a lot of information.
Very, very tropical. I'm just answering questions in advance.
Got you. Okay.
Sometimes there's some more questions about this.
Okay, sure.
Now you can pick 3 movies to watch for the rest of your life, and yes, you will eventually die on this island.
Okay.
Just so you're aware.
Uh-huh.
Now, which 3 movies would you pick, and why is your first choice Her Name Was Krista?
First off, no, Richard, no. But I do have one more question for you. What kind of boat is it?
Okay, so it's actually hand carved from oak wood.
Okay.
Okay. And it's an old school sailboat. Like, think of it like the Mayflower. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're going to Plymouth right
Okay,
now.
got it.
It's not going to be Plymouth. It's going to be some island over near the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
And there may or may not be a gang of cannibals on there too that you might have to watch out for.
Okay.
But don't let that factor into the decision of which movies you're going to watch.
Got it. It's still not Her Name Is Krista. And that is a whole other story. Anybody who knows me, and if you want to hear that full story, feel free to reach out to Richard Russell.
Shout out to James L. Edwards because, first of all, and you can't even deny, is a very brilliantly made movie. It is very well done. It is not for the faint of heart.
It has a shock factor, to say the least.
Yes. Which was the end goal.
It absolutely was, and it completed its goal with me. I was very shocked by it. But to circle back to the question now that I'm on my Mayflower boat crashing at 12:14 Eastern Time. So one of my favorite movies of all time is actually The Book of Eli. Mm-hmm. And so that would definitely be one of my movies. And then I'm a huge Harry Potter guy. So just like most people, though, whether you think it's stereotypical or not, it's going to have to be The Prisoner of Azkaban. Probably one of the best, if not the best, of the whole series. And then my third movie, oh man, I don't even know what my third one that I could watch over and over again. You know what? I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna be a little vulnerable. I love Moana.
Okay.
I feel like Moana would be my third movie.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that. A little bit of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson action.
Not where I was going with it, but okay. Way to make it weird.
Well, I
was more going as like the project as a whole.
The project. Well, I'm a fan of The Rock, so the Rock's in that. That's what
absolutely,
I'm talking about.
he is.
Nothing weird about being a fan of The Rock.
You're right. You know what? You're right. It's been a pleasure being here. No, I'm just kidding.
Unless we're talking about the movies like Rampage or San Andreas, or insert The Rock into the most bland generic action movie ever, then there might be an issue. But I mean,
so you only like him in Moana too?
No, I like the. I think The Rock is an amazing tooth fairy.
All right. I'll give it to you. I'll give that one to you. And you thought 2 weeks ago Keith's outro was weird.
You know what? It all started back when Jake Reynolds brought out the balloons. Now, can I be open and I'll be honest and I'll be vulnerable because you were talking about Harry Potter and I have to admit, and this might shock you because I'm such a film buff, but I've never seen any of the Harry Potter movies, and there's a reason why.
We may not be able to be friends anymore.
So scratch that. I love Harry Potter. I think it's the greatest series ever, and I don't want to lose my first assistant director on the next project. So yes, Harry Potter is the best. No. In all reality, though, when I was a little kid, I used to have the circle Harry Potter like glasses, and the way my hair was cut and everything.
Gotcha.
And so all the kids on the playground used to pick on me and say I looked like Harry Potter, and I had this chip on my shoulder, and I never got into it like at the right age, and now it's just finding the motivation, when I could be watching Her Name Was Krista.
Oh man. The only thing is, I will tell you this, even if you don't watch it necessarily from a story standpoint, there is a lot of gorgeous cinematography in it, and I do feel like and this is purely because I'm a Harry Potter fan, I'm trying to convert you, you should go watch it for the cinematography and and take all that into effect.
Well, I will say I am trying to get out of my comfort zone and watch different movies than what I would normally watch, because I can only rewatch Reservoir Dogs, Goodfellas, and Pulp Fiction. I don't know how many.
Right. Yeah.
So that
we'll expand a little bit.
Expand a little bit. Yeah.
Not too far. Just a little. Into an entirely new fantasy world.
Exactly. But I think that's great. That's one reason why I love asking, because everybody comes in with a different perspective. Whenever I ask what 3 movies are you going to bring with you, and there's always there's always different reasoning behind it, and everyone's coming in with a different perspective, and everybody has different taste. I mean, we've gotten very mixed. I mean, you're bringing Moana, someone else is bringing Terrifier, and it's very eclectic, getting that kind of diverse taste, and I think the key thing for everyone that's watching or listening to us really is to go out there and go ahead and expand your taste and watch a variety of films, because there's always so much that you're going to learn. No matter what it is, what you're watching. Quentin Tarantino even said, "I didn't go to film school. I went to films." That's the key to it.
Right.
So, real quick before we close it out, where can people follow you on social media, keep up with you, and keep up with what you're doing?
So I don't really use social media all that much unless it's for potential business or anything. But I am Tyler the AD on both Instagram and TikTok, and like I said, I don't really use them, but those are the main ones if I'm going to post anything film that they'll be.
Awesome. All right. Perfect. Well, there you have it. Well, Tyler, thank you again for being on the show. And thank you all for tuning in and checking us out here today. Remember, if you're liking this content, if you're on Spotify listening to us right now, make sure that you go and you give us a follow. Those of you on YouTube, you know what to do. Go ahead and subscribe. Turn that bell on for notifications, and don't forget to smash that like button. Okay, let me know that you actually like me. But anyway, guys, until next time, as always, that's a wrap.